am Dr. Ebony. I am a licensed psychologist and food relationship strategist. And this month is Women's History Month. And we are actually celebrating by doing a series of talks around empowerment for women. So the name of this series is Women Empowered. So go ahead and invite people. If you know they want to be here, if you know they should be here, go ahead and invite people. There will not be a replay passed tonight. So they're only going to be able to catch it and watch it a couple of hours after the replay happens, okay? So go ahead and invite those people and come in. Tonight's topic and talk is going to be centered around taking off the cape. As Black women and women, we generally are tasked with the responsibility of doing it all. And tonight I want to talk to us and have a conversation with you around what it means to take off the cape and allowing yourself permission to do just that. This is going to be a little bit interactive, so I'm going to be changing the slides for you. So it's going to be a little bit different than the talks that I normally have because I have slides. Now, if you're over on Facebook, you're going to want to come over to Instagram because Facebook doesn't have slides, but Instagram does, okay? So we're going to be bringing up some pictures for you. I'm going to be talking about some things. I'm going to be asking you to put questions in the question box if you have them. If you have a question that you know you want me to answer that's not related to what I'm talking about, or even if it is, put it down in the box where you see the bubble, the comment bubble and the question mark, because I'm going to have a Q&A session at the end and I'll be able to get to all the questions at that time. Okay. But if you want to chat along with me, I love for y'all to give me some yes girls, some amen. Yep. Some agreement, all of that stuff. I love to see y'all talking in the chat. It actually gives me energy. Hey, Angie. Hey, Lauren. It actually gives me energy. So y'all continue to do that as well. So let's jump right on in, y'all. I'm going to change the picture here and we're going to give you an idea of what it is that you can expect from today's talk. So during today's talk, we're going to be talking about stereotypes of Black women in particular. So it's Women's History Month. My particular focus is on Black women. Okay. Overview of the stereotypes, how we got to where we are, this superwoman archetype, and then the strong Black woman archetype, and then the pitfalls of being a strong Black woman, and the reinforcers of strong Black woman, how you can take care of yourself, and how you can begin to go about asking for help, which is required when we take off the cape, okay? So if there's anything that you don't understand and you would like for me to actually answer, go ahead and put that in the Q&A box or go ahead and type it and I'll try to catch the comments as we go. But be sure to share, comment, and ask your questions freely, okay? Let's talk about the first one. Let me know if y'all can see that slide, the overview of the stereotypes. So when we talk about stereotypes, we're talking about the stereotypes of Black women throughout history. Okay, how we got here to be kind of perceived in the ways that we are. Let me know if y'all can see those slides over here on Instagram. We have the mammy stereotype, we have the sapphire matriarch stereotype, and we have the Jezebel. Let me know if y'all have ever heard of those stereotypes before. The mammy is depicted as usually a larger body Black woman who typically is taking care of everybody else in history and media, historical context. She's been the one who's taking care of her family, everybody else's family, particularly white families. Okay, so she's presented or depicted with the bandana on her head, a rag on her head. She's usually a larger body, darker skin tone Black woman. Okay, and she's the one who is the nurturer. She's the one who is the caretaker. She's the one who does all of the raising. Okay. Then we have the sapphire or the matriarch. And we know that this is typically who is typically the sapphire, y'all? Throw it out at me. It's a typical name that we see when we think about sapphire. It's a typical depiction or description of Black women that we see when we think about sapphire. She's fiery. She's bold. She's blunt. What does that remind you of? There's another name that this is called in present day. Okay, present day. Whoever gets this gets a 15% off coupon to the My Therapy Card shop. You're going to have to DM me for the coupon. You've heard of mammy? What is it? Okay, because I told y'all this was interactive. So what is it? And you can only get that if you're in this live session right now. You cannot get it if you're watching the replay. But the matriarch and sapphire usually has a name. And if you tell me what the name is, you get a 15% off coupon to the My Therapy Card shop. Okay. I don't see any. I don't see anybody putting anything up. This is typically, y'all, the angry black woman. This is usually the angry black woman. She's fiery, she's bold, she's blunt. She's an angry black woman. That's the sapphire and the matriarch. Think about Olivia Pope. Think about Taraji as Cookie on, think about Taraji as Cookie. Think about Foxy Brown in the middle. Think about Octavia. No. That's not Octavia, but from The Help. From The Help. We have all of those depictions, right? And she's usually the one who has a bold attitude, okay? Strong black woman. Yeah, but it's usually called the angry black woman, right? So I want y'all to understand that the angry black woman didn't just appear. This has been who we have been depicted as, okay? And then we move on to the Jezebel. I know many of you have heard of the Jezebel. I know many of you have heard of Jezebel. Jezebel is the one, if you look down and you can kind of see the writing is covering it up, but she's the one whose sexuality is insatiable. Her sex appetite is insatiable. She's scantily clad. She's the black woman who just wants to have sex all the time, and she's labeled as a freak, a hoe in current times, those kinds of things. Yes. That's very true. The matriarch is usually depicted as a grandmother. So over time, K Restoration, there's been an overlap of the mammy matriarch and then the sapphire matriarch. Okay. And so they've been depicted, but if you look back into the literature, sapphire and matriarch have been the ones who have been the head of families. They take care of everything. They take care of business. But if you think about it, we've had to be all of those things. So there's a lot of overlap in all of them. Okay. And then you have the Jezebel. She's the freak. She's the hoe. She's the one whose sexual appetite can't be satisfied. Okay. And she's the one who is looked at as the one who, if she has a sexuality and she's comfortable with it and she's presenting it, then she's wrong. Okay. So that's an overview of stereotypes. All of those, if you look at them, have some negative connotation attached to them, right? There's some negativity. If you're a mammy, you're not sexually attractive. You are always covered up. Usually, again, historical diet culture, fat phobia. You're a larger woman, you're in a larger body. You get kind of cast aside as a person who just takes care of everybody. You're not, if you look in movies, mammy does not have any sexual kind of experiences whatsoever. She's not the person who's sleeping with anybody. She's just the person who's having taking care of everybody, but she's not the one who's able to have sex, which I think is why we had such a problem. What movie was that? I think it wasn't a movie. It was How to Get Away with Murder. And I think that people were saying that Viola Davis, they were having a hard time viewing Viola Davis as sexual. And I was like, well, that's because media has depicted us in such a horrible way and have boxed us in so much that we aren't allowed to be the sexual beings that we are. And we have to fit into these boxes. And honestly, these are negative stereotypes that doesn't allow us to progress. It doesn't allow us to actually take care of ourselves and be who we are fully and broadly. Okay. So out of these, we have what was born as the superwoman. Okay. So we also have the superwoman born out of trying to counteract those things. But also there's one more stereotype. There's the welfare queen, right? There's the welfare queen. The black woman who gets assistance from government and doesn't work and basically is fabulous and fly because of the assistance that she gets from the government. So black women throughout history said, well, wait a second. We don't want to be associated with these negative depictions of who we are. We're going to reject that. We're going to develop the superwoman archetype. So the superwoman archetype was developed to counteract those negative stereotypes, the welfare queen, the Jezebel, the mammy, the matriarch, the sapphire, all of those things, right? Also, during slavery, post-slavery, out of a need for survival and to make money to support the family, black women had to take on these nurturing roles because it was a matter of surviving trauma, thriving, and making sure that her family was taken care of. So you have two components of superwoman here. Born out of a need of necessity, like we were born right into this role because of the disenfranchisement of our families. the ways that our families were broken up, the oppression that was placed on us, the lack of resources that we had to do what we had to do to survive. That meant that we had to work in places to take care of other people because those are the only jobs that were available to us. So we also inherited this role of superwoman because we could do all things and we had to do all things. The other side of that is superwoman was an archetype that was developed to say, hey, we are way more than those negative things that y'all put on us. Do y'all see how we got here? Let me know if anybody has any questions about that. The superwoman is also akin to strong black woman. Okay, strong black woman, I can do everything. I can do all things. I'm going to do all things because many times we have had to do all things because of the family being broken apart, the lack of resources again. So we've had to make do and we've had to keep families together and we've had to be the cornerstone backbone of so many of our families, right? So many of our communities. If you think about church is largely run and kind of kept together by women. African American women represent the largest group of faith-based people in this country. So if you think about the black church, who do you think is running the black church and the keeping the black church together? Mostly is women. I remember growing up in Mississippi, there was a mother board. And y'all can probably guess what all the mothers look like. They didn't look like me. They probably didn't look like you. They looked like the mammy stereotype. Typically, that's what I saw growing up. Okay? Because it's the nurturer, is what they knew how to do. Back it up to my family. I remember my mom working for white families and what that looked like. She had to do it because that was the job that was available. In Mississippi, these were the jobs that black women were able to get. Okay? So they could do all things. They could manage your household, manage this household. So this is how we got here. Okay? Out of a need to correct some of that stuff. Let's talk about what happens then when that happens, though. When we take on the role of strong black woman, when we take on the role of superwoman, think about Superman. Superman is indestructible. You can't destroy him. You can't hurt him. And if you do, he keeps bouncing back. What do you think that does for women who take on the role as superwoman? So throughout history, this superwoman archetype, this superwoman role that many black women have stepped into has served to help us survive, have served to help us take care of our families. But the flip side of that, it has also served to dehumanize us in society. So think about medical practices and different things that have been placed on black women, experiments around for black women around pain tolerance and different types of medical procedures being practiced with black women because of this idea that black women can take anything and everything. So here we are trying to make things better for ourselves, trying to take care of our families, trying to make a living, trying to survive, and that being taken also and twisted on us to then now use against us. Oh, you're strong? Oh, that means that you can take everything. And so now we look like we don't suffer with pain. Now we can see a lot of the things in the medical industry with black women aren't believed around their pain. So we are basically dehumanized. So these are the pitfalls of being a strong black woman. People perceive us to have more strength than what we have, even when we don't, even when we are tired of it, right? Tolerance. We can tolerate more and we have the capacity to deal with more. We can see this throughout our relationships. Like, let's just be real for a second. We can see this in our relationships. We see this in the medical field, but let's think about the ways that we are sometimes treated in our relationships. Oh, girl, you can take it. I remember distinctly a Betty Wright song when I was younger. A man is going to be a man and you can take it. You can tolerate it. It's better than not having a man at all. We can take it. Grandma took it. And then people will shame and guilt you into doing something different or standing up for yourself differently if that's not what you want. Oh, y'all just ain't made the same no more. These young kids, they not made the same no more. Y'all don't know how to deal with divorce. Y'all get divorced too quickly. Y'all don't know how to stay in relationships. And people don't realize that our grandparents and things stayed in relationships out of a need to survive as well. Okay? And that when we have a different choice and we're no longer in survival mode, we may not have to do that. And we'll talk more about that. Yes, I agree. Living this currently, I cannot live up to this archetype, and the stress of trying to is killing me. You are saying a whole word right there, because that is what's happening, and I'll get into that injustice. Well, actually, this is a great segue, because the next point is health disparities. Because of the lack of resources, because of the things that were not made available to us, there's a lot of health disparities that Black women experience. There's a lot of health disparities that the Black communities experience, because we're perceived to be able to take on more. And then we know that systemic issues have made our access to things less than our white counterparts would normally have. Right? So we've been made to do without and to figure it out. And because we always figure it out, because we are survivors, because we're always going to figure it out, because we're going to come up with a solution and we're going to survive, we're looked at as we make a lot with a little. So that also makes people perceive our tolerance as higher. Make them perceive us as being able to handle more, because we are doing what we need to do with the little bit that we have. Does that make sense? And so then you have stress-related health issues that's attached to the strong Black woman. So you have stress that you normally feel, that you don't take care of because you're busy and your schedule is busy taking care of everybody else, or trying to live up to the expectations that have been placed on you, maybe by your parents, by your grandparents, by the women who raised you, the people who raised you, around what you should be like as a Black woman, trying to prepare you for this world. And all of that stuff came from a really great place of trying to prep you for the world, because they know that the world is cruel, and they know that the world is going to view you in a negative way. So they're trying to equip you, not knowing that that is also going to be things that lead to our detriment. Because now many of us are trying to live up to this and not taking care of ourselves, or trying not to be a disappointment to people who we love, and that can actually be at our detriment. Okay, so you have a lot of stress, a lot of overwhelm, headaches, body pain, a lot of discomfort, just emotionally, not knowing how to rectify those emotional issues that you have, being looked at as weak if you go to get help, those kinds of things, and that's going to come in the next slide. But we also, because of the strong Black woman, many times it leads us to isolate and to deal with things in isolation, right? Leads us to deal with things in isolation and alone. And so now we're trying to figure out how we're more distant from our communities, because we're trying to figure out how to keep things together, because that is our natural inclination. That has been passed down to us. Okay, so we know we're going to keep things together. We're going to make it work. Right? Also, it leads us to neglect ourselves in the spirit of taking care of everybody else. We learn not to put ourselves first, and we actually have this conditioned guilt that we feel. I want us to spend a little bit of time there. We have this conditioned guilt. Y'all know what conditioning is? Something that has been paired with something else, so it now becomes a habit. How many of you know that an emotion response can be a habit too? Like the way that you respond to something can be habitual. So I hear a lot of people say, I feel a lot of guilt. And I'm like, have you done something wrong? Have you done something that goes against your morals or values? And many times the answer is no. Like I went out with my girlfriends, I haven't done anything wrong, but why do I feel guilty? Because many of us are conditioned to feel guilty about things. Many of us are conditioned to feel shame around taking care of ourselves. So these emotions that come up are also a conditioned response, means that they're automatic. You do something for yourself, there's an automatic feeling of guilt that rushes over you that you're doing something wrong, because over time, we've kind of been fed these messages that is somehow wrong. Yeah, so I agree. Many of us can't be feminine and vulnerable. We also can't be really sexual. We can't take control of our sexuality when we are strong Black women, right? We're kind of kept in a box. We're kept in a box. Somebody said the pressure is intense for y'all. It really is. It really is. Black women and women deal with a lot, okay? So we have all of these things that are somehow, we inherit these things, and then we have all of these health issues that we now have to learn how to rectify, but many of us don't even know where to look. But this next slide, I'm going to go ahead and warn you that I'm going to talk about some reinforcers of strong Black women that everybody may not particularly agree with, and I am totally okay disagreeing. And these are reinforcers from the way that I see things. Okay, so bear with me if you don't agree. I know I might step on some toes. I'm completely okay with that. But we got to talk about it, because not talking about it is not getting us anywhere. Okay, so let's talk about some reinforcers of the strong Black woman. Of course, the continued systemic oppression, the continued lack of resources, the continued disenfranchisement, the continued breaking up of Black families, however they're structured, however they look, the continual issues that are being perpetuated in our communities, the continued kind of disadvantages that we have over our white counterpart or our privileged counterparts continue to reinforce strong Black woman. Remember why strong Black woman was developed. Remember why superwoman was developed. Well, if we continue to have issues with resources, if we continue to have issues with our families being held together, then we naturally are going to rise to the forefront, because we have to survive. So many of us want to shed the cape. Many of us want to take off this cape, but we can't, because we have to do these things, and we have to fight for resources, and we have to fight for access. So it's a double-edged sword. We want to take it off, but we can't. Because taking it off for some people means that the family falls apart. Taking it off for some people means that the needs aren't being met. So it becomes a really difficult situation to navigate. Absolutely. Lack access, availability of resources, equal pay. So it becomes hard to shed the cape. People are still having to work jobs. We just see that the minimum wage was not even approved. So people are still having to do what they need to do to survive while we're still trying to shed this cape. So it makes it very, very difficult. This next one, I apologize in advance, but many times our faith and the ways that we were taught about our faith and religion and who we are and what we're supposed to do keeps us in this perpetual cycle of guilt and shame. Okay? Certain messages such as have faith, your faith is not big enough. If you have faith, then you shouldn't worry. All of these things kind of honestly keeps us in this perpetual cycle of guilt and shame. Or, it makes us passive, more passive, so that we don't take care of ourselves, right? So just think about the many teachings that we hear throughout our faith, throughout religion, that kind of thing, of who we are, what we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to do. Don't question, don't complain. This one is a big one, because I heard this growing up. Don't complain about what's bothering you. That reinforces this strong Black woman archetype and narrative. Yes, absolutely try therapy. So we have to be careful that the things that are meant to instill hope, we have to be careful that those same things aren't keeping us stuck. Okay? There was a passage that I read, and I love my friends to death. There was one that was sent this morning in the group text, and I know they probably watching me. They're going to get on me. But it was one that was sent that said, no weapon formed shall prosper. You don't have time to rest. Don't be something about it. I wish I could pull it up. But it was basically reinforcing strong Black woman without them knowing that it was reinforcing strong Black woman. Like, even if I am having a bad day, I know that message is meant to send hope, but I don't even have the opportunity to say, actually, this is a very crappy day for me, and I'm not feeling like I can keep it together, because the message is you better keep it together. You don't have a choice. You better keep it together. Okay? And many of us get so sucked into that we feel guilty when we are not our best. We feel guilty when we are not operating at 100%. Okay? And we feel like we're less than, or we're somehow a failure if we're not operating at 100%. And we should not be made to feel that way. But the things that we don't know that we're listening to, taking in every day, we don't realize that those same messages are reinforcing the very thing that we're trying to shed. Learning to be okay and not keeping it together is definitely a challenge. Because if you look around, there is not a lot of reinforcement in our society, in our communities, in our circles that help Black women feel like they can fall apart. We are trying to do a better job. That's why these talks are important. That's why you have group coaching programs. That's why you have therapy. So Black women can feel like they have a space to just fall apart and not be okay. Right? Yes. And everything that we're taught in religion is not horrible. That's not what I said. Some things are actually great. Some things just actually are meant to help us, but they also work in a cyclical fashion, and they actually keep us stuck. And I'm not even, yeah. Okay? So we have to be careful about what we're taking in and the messages that we are receiving, okay? And we need to continue to have these conversations. And nothing is wrong with questioning that. Nothing is wrong with questioning that, but we can also be made to feel guilty about questioning that if we have been guilted into that over time, conditioned to feel guilty. Okay? We are taught to be strong and keep pushing. You may have had a bad day today. Joy comes in the morning. Like, what if I'm not ready for joy to come in the morning? Like, do I even have space to just wallow in my mess? Do I even have space to do that? Okay. So let me see what the comment is. Believing the wrong people when it comes to my faith and not developing my own. Yeah, it'll cripple us, and it'll help us get stuck even more. Also, the thing that reinforces strong black woman is trauma. So we develop this mistrust of people. We develop this mistrust of ourselves. So we honestly don't trust people to be able to help us in crisis. We don't trust people to be able to have our backs because we've been so betrayed, because we've kind of been violated in ways, and most times by our own family members or people who we thought had our best interests in mind. So we learn that, you know what, see, I'm only going to do things myself. See, I know I can't trust anybody. And we see this a lot in relationships amongst black women. Okay? We see this a lot when it comes to relationships. It's like, that's why I'm not friends with black women. We'll see that all the time. That's why I don't hang with black women. That's why I keep my circle small. No new friends. All of that stuff reinforces the strong black woman narrative. The no new friends, you can't come in my circle, I don't trust you, all of these things, right? I got it. That's why I know I can't depend on anybody else. It keeps us wrapped up in survival mode and also wrapped up in this narrative of having to be and do everything. We also lack trust for ourselves. We lack trust for ourselves, and lack of trust for yourself looks like comparing yourself to everybody else. Comparing yourself to everybody else, doubting yourself, not able to make decisions, resting your decisions on this need to overcompensate for something that has happened. So even though we do everything, and even though we can take care of everything, we have a huge mistrust within ourselves. Okay? Where we can't even depend on ourselves to make decisions. Many of us don't trust our own decisions because trauma has left us untrusting or mistrusting ourselves, mistrusting our judgment. So we live in isolation so that people don't find out who we are or what we know or what we don't know how to do. So that's also imposter syndrome. We don't ask for help because we don't want people to know that we don't know what we're doing, or we think they're going to know that we don't know what we're doing. So all of these things are interconnected and interwoven. Yeah. Okay? So think about the things that are reinforcing as you're trying to shed that cape. Think about the things that are reinforcing in your life. Okay? This next slide. Let's talk about how to take care of you. And this is not going to be easy, but how to take care of you. Learning how to prioritize yourself and learning how to place yourself in a position where you come first, and challenging the idea that if you come first, you're somehow wrong for that. Challenging that idea that somehow if you have kids, if you have a partner, that you somehow have to come last in all of that. Taking off the cape means that we have to prioritize our needs. We cannot take off the cape, y'all. We cannot move out of this superwoman role if we don't prioritize ourselves. You can do this by setting boundaries, saying no to yourself and to others. Many of us have to learn how to say no to ourselves and learn how to say no to others. Many of us are such in this place of independence, hyper independence, that can also be a trauma response as well, that we aren't going to tell ourselves no or place any boundaries around ourselves because we've already experienced that from people who hurt us. So we are free within ourselves and learning and gaining our independence by allowing ourselves to have things that have been denied of us. We don't even realize that may be happening. So we may be acting on impulse, acting on urges all the time, and not setting boundaries with ourselves around who we let in our lives, how much time we spend on social media, how much time we spend at work, how many projects we say yes to, how much time we devote to other people's growth and projects, how much time we just allow ourselves to be pulled from 10 different ways. Okay? Some of that setting boundaries and prioritizing yourself is going to require that you work through some of that guilt and shame again. Taking time to go eat by yourself. I've had friends tell me that they eat in the car and that they want to just enjoy themselves, and they feel guilty because they enjoyed a meal to themselves. That is necessary. It is necessary, and it is your birthright to enjoy a meal by yourself. Just because you're in a relationship or just because you have children does not mean that you don't get a chance to enjoy a meal by yourself. You deserve that. You deserve all of the things that make you feel whole. You deserve all of the things that make you feel cared for. You deserve to give yourself those things. Okay? But some of us have got to learn how to work through that guilt and shame that we feel that tells us that that's not okay. In addition to guilt and shame, many of us have got to learn how to ride the waves of other negative emotions like sadness, rejection, people being mad at us, disappointment. Because many people, when you are kind of conditioned to feel guilt, are also conditioned to be people pleasers in a way, which gets in the way of us being able to set boundaries and say no to people. So we have to ride the wave of, oh, they're going to be disappointed with me. Oh, we got to learn how to cry through that thing. We got to learn how to cry through that thing. I remember being in, and I told y'all this before, but I remember in 2020, seems like it was 5 years ago, and it seems like it was just yesterday. But I remember having to let go of some friendships and having to cry my way through it and saying, I would rather cry right now than to make that phone call. I would rather curl up on this couch, cry it out, than to make that phone call. And I recognize that I also come from a place of privilege with having skills available to me to be able to do that. Everybody does not have the skills available to them to be able to just cry it out and to be able to just be a mess. So I recognize that I might not have the same level of responsibilities as far as children go, that type of thing, to be able to just allow myself to just break apart. And we've got to begin to create those things in our lives that allow us that space to do that. Okay? This is where planning ahead and mapping it out comes in. I was just talking to my sister this past weekend, and she said, you know what? I'm going to start taking myself out on Saturdays like you do. You might not be able to do it every Saturday, but maybe if you map it out and plan enough ahead of time that you'll be able to do it once a month. And we want to start really small. We don't want to, again, strong black woman, we pack a lot on ourselves. We don't want to start out super, super, super ambitious and think that we're going to do it every Saturday. Pick a Saturday out of a month, see how it goes, and allow yourself to do that thing that you said you want to do. Map it out. Fit it into your schedule. See how it's going to all play out. Put some things in place that you can do while you're out by yourself. I'm going to make this phone call when I'm out, or this is the time that I'm going to call my sister and talk to her while I'm out, or this is the time that I'm going to work on this puzzle while I'm out, or I'm going to do this color by numbers while I'm out, or I'm going to scroll social media while I'm out. There's no perfect way to do these things, and I don't want us to get caught up in that either. Because if taking some time to yourself means that you got to distract yourself just to be there, do that. That is totally okay. But again, when we put our cape on, we become perfectionists as well. And many of us are kind of trying to live up to this idea that it has to be done this kind of way or it's not done right. And many of us are still trying to be right in every way possible. And that is also causing us some stress. Not realizing that we can be flexible in the ways that things look. as long as we are trying different things, and then we can work our ways up. So this time, maybe you take some distractions. Next time, you start to peel back on that distraction, okay? Those are some things that you can start doing. Okay. Asking for help. A lot of us have to start in our mindset. A lot of us have to start in our mindset. What does it mean about you? I ask my clients this question all the time. What does it mean about you if you're somebody who needs help? And I want you just to think about that right now. What does it mean about you if you're somebody who has to ask for help? What are you telling yourself that means about you? What are you telling yourself that means about you if you have to ask for help? Are you calling yourself a failure? Are you calling yourself weak? Look at the things that play in your mind and in your language about who you are around certain things. Okay? If you don't ask for help, it breaks you down, or asking for help breaks you down. And so what is that thing that you're telling yourself about what it means to ask for help? Are you saying that you're inadequate? Are you saying that you can't rough this out? You don't have what it takes to tough this out? Listen to these things that we're saying to ourselves, because these are also the messages that continue to reinforce us staying stuck in the strong black woman narrative. Okay? Sitting with the discomfort of delegating. I know many of us don't like to delegate. I'm guilty of that. It is taking a lot for me to learn how to ask people to do things for me while running a business, because guess what you can't do? You can't do it all yourself. Feel like I should know better. Why do you feel like you should know better? Who told you that you should know better? What is that? What is that about? Where did that come from? Yeah, we got to begin to peel back the layers of, why do I feel inadequate asking for help? Why do I feel like I should know better? Where did you first hear that thing, that you should know better than to do this? Think about that, because that's where a lot of our blame and self-deprecating thoughts come from. A lot of these core beliefs that branch out to many different types of things that we say to ourselves. Overcompensating, proving things to people. What are we overcompensating for? What are we trying not to let people see? What is the thing that we're trying to constantly cover up that we don't want people to know? Because asking for help might expose us, right? So ask yourself, what are those things that you're overcompensating for? Allow yourself to remove your cape slowly so that you can begin to expose yourself to the discomfort of asking for help. Do it safely. Do it with people who are going to have your back. You can't just do it with anybody, right? Sitting with that discomfort of delegating and not having to prove anything. And we have to unlearn and relearn a lot of messages. We have to realize that the things that were taught to us by our parents and the people who taught them many times came from a place of survival. Many of us have got to realize that we are no longer in a requirement to be in a place of survival. Many of us are not. Sometimes we are, during 2020, COVID, all of this stuff that we have going on, yes. But ask yourself, the same things that were meant to help me survive, do I still need them? The same things that were meant to help me survive, do I still need them? This was meant to help us survive. Do we need them? And you can go context by context. Do I need that today? Because there are some days when I'm going to need that. Like, say that I'm having to plan funeral services for family members or something. I'm going to need to step into that role, but do I need to step into it 100% of the time? Does that need to be my default? Or do I need to be able to recognize which tool is needed and when? Many of us are using the same tool for every situation and wondering why we're struggling. We don't need to use the same tool for every project. We don't. A hammer is not needed every time. I don't need to just be walking around with my hammer with me all the time. But when a hammer becomes my safety, then I think that I need it. Does that make sense? Did y'all catch that? When a hammer has been conditioned to be my safety, I think that I need it. I haven't hammered anything in 3 years, but I still carry it with me every day just in case. That's survival mode. That's survival mode. I still carry that hammer with me everywhere I go. I haven't used it in ages, but that's survival mode. And many of us have to learn how to get ourselves out of survival mode and recognize when it's time and when it's time to let it go. Okay? Okay? And I want to go back before I move on to the next one. Unlearning and relearning. A lot of the messages that we learned around who it means to be Black women, we also have to be careful that we're not passing that on to our legacies. I want to make sure that I give us that point about what we pass on to our legacies, meaning our children, so that we're not creating more generations that feel like they have to be everything to everybody at all times. And we have to be willing to effectively model some of these things. Okay? We have to be able to effectively model, because this is where a lot of learning comes in. Parents can tell you one thing, but then when we saw them do something else, that stuck with us more. Mama saying don't do this, but I see her over here struggling. And so I'm paying attention to her behavior more than I'm paying attention to her words. Okay? So we have to be careful about that. Okay. All right, y'all. So I have a special thing that is happening. Don't go yet because we have not gotten to questions, but I do want to tell you about this program. So for people who have purchased the My Therapy cards, I am finally creating a My Therapy cards coaching room where it will be a 6-week program between 15 and 20 women where we would dive into the cards on a deeper level. This is a paid program. If you want to be on the list for this, you can text your name. So text Michelle to 512-877-8535. Okay? If you want to go into the My Therapy Cards coaching room where we will dive into the cards a little bit more, and this is specifically for people who are feeling like they're having a tough time getting started with the cards, or having a tough time being accountable to the work, or having a tough time processing what is coming up for them. We're going to dive more into that in the coaching room. Okay? So text your name, text sign me up, Michelle, sign me up, to 512-877-8535. This is Michelle, sign me up, to 512-877-8535, and I put it on Facebook, okay? So let me know if you have any questions about that, but it's a 6-week program for a small group of women, 15 to 18, where we're going to dive intimately into these cards and begin to do some work around what is coming up for folks, okay? Now we're going to go to Q&A. I have one question here, okay? Let me know if any other questions come up. And let me know if y'all enjoyed this too. Let me know if this was helpful to you. Let me know if you enjoyed this. Let me know if there was anything you want me to go back and answer. So you mentioned going through, how can you do that safely? Not become even more depressed or having wandering thoughts. So sweet Vita Crochet Braids, you're going to want to do this. And I wish I could bring up Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You're going to want to do this work when you feel stable, when your resources are in place, like food, water, shelter, that kind of thing. Those things are in place. That's the number there. You're going to want to do those things when you feel like you have adequate support and your foundational needs are being met. When you're going through, though, you can't guarantee that you won't become more depressed. You will, many times. Okay? And I laugh not because I'm laughing at you, but because this is something that I want us to know. When you have an infection and you go to the doctor and you're asking them to dig that thing out, many times it will hurt. And it'll hurt like hell. Okay? But what helps it is the doctor giving you some soothing ointment, or the doctor giving you some bandages, or the doctor telling you to put some ice on it, or the doctor telling you to prop that leg up, or the doctor giving you garment to wrap around it, some things to kind of cover it up. But what the doctor is giving you is coping skills. Okay? Coping skills. Prop your leg up. Put ice on your arm. Wrap it in those bandages. Don't let air get to it. Wash it every night. Those are coping skills. So when we're going through, we have to make sure we have adequate coping skills, because it may get worse for us. when you're going through, and a lot of people, when they start therapy, they start to have many, it depends. Everybody won't have this, but some people will have nightmares. Some people will have old memories resurface. All of that is so normal and natural. You don't want to have to experience that, but that's a part of the process sometimes. Okay? So thank you for asking that question. Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions, y'all? Do y'all have any other questions for me? This program is going to start at the end of March. I didn't say that, but the 15 to 20 women that I'm going to take for this program is going to start at the end of March. I can't do more than that. It's not going to be effective after that point. Okay? So text your name, sign me up at 512-877-8535. Okay? Let me know if there are any more questions. Did y'all enjoy this format? Did y'all like being able to follow along with the pointers that I was making? Or is that too much and was it distracting? I'm here for the feedback. Let me know. And Facebook, I'm sorry that y'all missed it. Hey, Amai, I'm sorry that y'all missed it over there. But did y'all like the slides? I've already set a precedent in relationships of who I am. Strong black woman, mammy, or whatever. How can I now begin to change myself in my eyes and others? That's a really good question. That's going to take some time. Okay? Define who you, here's where I would say, there's a values. I always say go back to values. If you go to the link in my bio, you'll see where you can download a free values assessment. When we are in line with our values, then we begin to act accordingly to those values. We begin to have a quality of life that is enjoyable for us, that is premium for us. So if my value is, for instance, I always use the example of being a good parent. If one of my values is being a good parent, then I decide what my goals are going to be to help me stay in alignment of being a good parent. If I don't know what my values are, I'm basically out here winging it. So one way to begin to help yourself and change yourself in the eyes of yourself is begin to live in alignment with your values. Values are those things that are most important to you. What is keeping you centered and anchored in yourself? You can have values around faith. You can have values around work. You can have values around your health. You can have values around finances. You can have values around relationships. What are your values? From your values, then you create goals to help you stay in alignment. You never really reach your values. You reach your goals. So I can't wake up one day and be like, I'm a good parent. My work here is done. You're always trying to be in constant alignment with it, but you'll never meet it. So you always want to be in alignment. And sometimes we can be down here, but we want to see in everything that we do and come back and continue to reassess how can we align ourselves as closely to that value as we can. And that requires that we go back and reevaluate what's happening for me, what's going on for me, where am I? And so I put together a neat little values assessment that's like a bullseye that tells you how much on target you are and how far off you are. So you can make baby steps for getting back in alignment. Okay? Y'all are so welcome. I'm so excited. I am not available for long distance therapy because therapists can only practice in the state that they're licensed. So if you are not a resident of Texas, I cannot practice with you. So that's the way our licensing laws are set up, and that's for every single therapist that you will come in contact with. If they are licensed in multiple states, then they can see you in those states only, but we can't just practice across the board. But you can get my therapy cards, and those will help. I posted on the question box, there's going to be a process. I order to be selected for the coaching group since it's only 15 to 20 people. It'll be whoever pays first, right? It'll be whoever pays first. So what's going to happen with that, Rizzy, is that I'm going to put out a blast and say to the people who text, I'm going to text y'all and say, hey, y'all, enrollment is open. It's going to fill up. It's first come, first serve. So that's why I'm asking for text messages and not emails, because if you're anything like me, you check your text messages first and you check your emails at night. Okay? So you get your text messages and you can sign up right away. Okay? That's okay. I understood what you were saying. Question though, if you are going through what participating in the cards helpful, or should we wait until we are better? If you are going through, you can do the cards. But if you're in a place, here's what I would say about that. If you're in a place where you're suicidal or you're really clinically depressed, the cards are not going to help with that. You probably need to get in with either a therapist or a medical professional who can prescribe you some medicine so that you can stabilize. But if you're really going through and you're really suicidal, or you're battling clinical depression or bipolar disorder, you're having an episode or something like that, the cards are not going to help, because remember, the cards don't substitute therapy. They are a tool to help you, to help be a bridge and help you to do some self-exploratory work. But if you're on that end of things, then you want to get in and get stable and then work through the cards. Okay? But if you know that you're at your brink and the cards may trigger something, you want to make sure that you have your support set up. It's like a bumper car. Make sure you have your buffers, your buffers and your bumpers in place, so that if something comes up, you have your resources that you can call upon. Okay? And that's going to do it for us now, y'all. Thank y'all so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.